Hey, everybody, and welcome to our latest Skewed cast for Skewed and Reviewed. I am Gareth, creator of Skewed and Reviewed, and I'm joined as always with Justin and Michael, and we're going to have a lot of fun today discussing some various new things in gaming, as well as TV, movies, and pop culture entertainment. You can catch us online at sknr.net. You can catch our articles each week in the 8 newspapers making up the Pinal Central Network. Just look up pinalcentral.com, keyword skewed. We have our quarterly magazine, and we're getting ready to put the next issue out at the end of March. And of course, we also have my weekly segment on BJ Shea's Geek Nation on KISW FM. Just just go to KISW.com, follow it in. We also simulcast the show each week, so you can find that on our website. So we're going to start off with the discussion this week. Michael was away last week. He's back, so why don't we discuss something that's been a big topic around gaming, Apex Legends. So, Michael, why don't you tell us what's going on with Apex Legends? We all know it's had a phenomenal response from the gaming community, but now we're getting into the mode of the free-to-play mode is starting to see some monetization coming up. So why don't you tell us what's going on, please?
Yeah, I mean, for those who haven't had a chance to really experience Apex Legends, such as squad-based PUBG, I guess if you want to put it that way. 3-person squads who go in and it's basically battle to the death to see which squad survives. It's gotten tremendous amount of positive reviews, considering it's a game that really wasn't on anybody's radar or on anybody's map until it launched. And again, it takes place in the Titanfall universe, but there was a question about whether without Titans, if it would be, the same kind of experience. They knew they weren't going to have the same kind of, wall running and that sort of thing that the pilots had. So there were a lot of questions around the release, but I'll have to say, I've played it for a little while and I'm really enjoying it, and I don't think it's too much of a surprise that when we talk free-to-play games that we start talking monetization about the types of things that are going to be added to it. But what I really liked how they did it when they released it was they actually put the game out without a lot of fanfare. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to really, hype it too much. They allowed people to play it. They allowed people to kind of experience it firsthand, see if it's something they were interested in, and then actually look to, monetize it later. So I think part of that is to kind of get that bad taste out of people's mouths where they were expecting that, that's going to be a big portion of the game. Now what they do, I know they're going to be releasing additional characters. I know there's going to be, unlockable characters. There's also going to be some traditional vanity item type stuff, whether or not you choose to buy those or are on you. But I think the core gameplay is going to stay the same. So I'm okay with monetization as long as it doesn't negatively impact the user's experience, whether they do it or not. And it kind of avoids that pay to play model. So I'm really kind of interested to see how they move forward with it. Again, it's got a lot of positive reviews. I follow a lot of Twitch streamers who are now playing it, some of whom were not even interested in it until they started playing it. And now all of a sudden it's become one of their more popular Twitch series that they're doing. So all in all, I think they have a really big hit on their hand, and they can be able to keep it under wraps for so long and then release it to such fanfare. I think this says a lot about the work that they put into it.
Okay, Justin, your take on this, please.
Yeah, I actually haven't played it yet. I have heard a tremendous amount of good things. I have a lot of friends who are playing it, and they all. I've heard nothing but rave things about it, and I've heard that it's actually, it lives up to the legacy of Titanfall pretty well. I was pretty big fan of Titanfall, and I think that was one of the concerns when this was announced was, is this really what's becoming of the Titanfall franchise, or is this kind of an in-between Titanfall 2 and Titanfall 3? But I've actually heard that it plays very well and it plays very similar to Titanfall, and it really lives up to the legacy of that franchise pretty well. I'm not huge into the PUBG / Fortnite model of games. They don't really appeal to me too much, but I'm definitely open to trying it just because I've heard so many great things about it. And, all the power to them. If they can kind of, work with this formula in this genre and make some compelling games with it, then, I'm all for that. That being said, obviously, as Michael was talking about, some of the discussion around this game comes down to monetization. And I've said it many times, and I'm pretty open to unique and new ways to monetize, because obviously the developers have to make some sort of money off the title, as long as it doesn't come at the detriment of the gameplay. I'm pretty open to new ways for them to decide like how they want to monetize this game.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about it, is that I'm not a big fan of the PUBG style battle royale, but I did play Blackout quite a bit for Call of Duty, and in the beta session. I'm curious about the Grand Operations update that's coming out for. It's out for PS4, but it's coming out because I think it's going to offer some new stuff up. I played Apex quite a bit, and I've actually enjoyed it. But of course, like a lot of these games, it is dependent on your team. If you have a good group of people who are watching out for each other and stuff like that, I've been able to, go into, I think, the top third of who's left in the match. I mean, usually you run into some weird things like, this guy just took a full clip from a Titan and took me out with 2 shots. But, that all depends on what kind of armor and power-ups and things like that. It seems that EA has been Respawn has been very active about removing cheaters or anything fraudulent out of the account, and they're policing it well. And, the big thing that I'm hearing from people about monetization is we knew it was coming, but as long as it's not a pay-to-win scenario, we're okay. And there's concern that if certain titles from the company underperform, Apex is their big hit right now. They freely admitted some of the other titles recently have not met financial expectations or sales expectations. And there's concern, especially because we saw what happened with Activision, right off record profits. They looked ahead, didn't like the numbers they were seeing, and had massive layoffs. And I think there's a concern that what happens if they look ahead and something, 1 or 2 titles underperform, that they're going to have to say, okay, we got to make up this money on Apex. And, the first thing we heard is a new character set, and that's going to be monetized. And you say, okay, well, that's fine. That's just new characters. But if we start running into all sorts of, well, if you get this and this and this, and you have all sorts of pay-to-play advantages, then we got a problem. But see, the other argument is, how long can you monetize just, oh, well, here's a new character, here's a new suit, here's a new variation. Eventually people are going to say, nah, you got to have something to get more casual fans interested in, but you have to walk that delicate line of not wanting to pay to play, as it were. So, because we all saw what happened with EA Star Wars Battlefront 2, when there was even just the belief that it was going to be heavy on pay to play. So, go figure. Moving on to our next topic, we have a rumor going around about an animated Alien series coming to bat. So, Justin, why don't you start us off? Tell us what you're hearing.
Yeah, so this comes on the heels of some other rumors we've talked about. We've talked about a rumor of a live-action Alien series that may be in the works, and supposedly there's several projects in the works right now. This latest rumor is basically a short-run animated series, probably about 7 or 8 episodes, that will follow the events of Alien Isolation, and supposedly this will debut directly on Fox's website or Alien's website, which it's an interesting idea, and I think it's plausible. I don't know. I think I'm not going to go ahead and say like this is a definite thing. Obviously, this is just a rumor, but it's definitely plausible, especially in today's day and age. Like there are a lot of new ways to deploy projects like this. A short run animated series. I mean, I actually just got done watching. I had missed it, but there was a new season of Samurai Jack, which it's just insane that to think of a cartoon that I watched as a kid 20 years ago, and I never ever thought in my life that it would ever have a follow up in any sort. Got a final season. I think it was 2017. That came out, and they only did like 7 episodes, 7 or 8 episodes as well, and that was on Adult Swim. But it just using that as an example, there's a lot of ways for these kind of projects to come to light. You know, they don't have to debut this on like a large channel. They don't have to necessarily deploy this like, you know, in any and spend a lot of money doing it. There's a lot of streaming services that probably would welcome something like this. So I think it's definitely plausible having like a more mature follow-up. And I think we had talked about this like when Alien Isolation came out, and supposedly it didn't really meet Sega's sales expectations, that perhaps that maybe they would follow up the story with maybe a cartoon or animated series. I think that was something you had mentioned, Gareth, at the time as a possibility. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, you definitely nailed it. You know, they don't necessarily have to spend millions and millions on a new game per se, that maybe they could kind of do a smaller scale project as an animated series. And that sort of makes complete sense. So we'll have to kind of wait and see. You know, with Disney owning Fox now, we're kind of in new waters, as we've said before. You know, the Alien franchise right now, obviously, sort of, as far as movies go, we're probably not getting any new movie announcements, but maybe, you know, new comics. Obviously, we've had several new comic lines being announced, so we'll just have to kind of wait and see if, you know, new animated series, maybe a new game down the road. So hopefully, it's going to be exciting times.
Yeah, Michael, your take on that, please.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting what we're seeing here, right? I mean, there was a lot of excitement when we saw some of the storyboards. Then they released the Alien mobile game, which I think was exciting for some, but maybe a little bit disappointing. We were kind of hoping for a little bit more information, I guess, on a new Alien, you know, game or movie that was going to kind of take back, you know, the Alien Isolation storyline, maybe do a little bit more comprehensive expanding on that. So I think this is a neat idea. I think this is one way for Fox to continue to gauge the interest in the Alien universe, maybe without spending a lot of money, but being able to deliver on a quality product. And again, this is there's rumors that this is going to be a quote unquote R-rated cartoon, which means it's going to be more adult focused, which I think for the Alien universe is kind of a requirement. I think if you don't maintain that maturity level, it tends to lose a lot of its edge and what makes it kind of classic in the first place. I hope this doesn't mean that we're not going to see a traditional Alien Isolation video game follow-up. I was a big fan of the game. I know that it maybe didn't meet sales expectations, but from those who I know that have played it, those who kind of played around with the unofficial or unsupported VR version of the game, there was always a big excitement that there would be an official VR release, right, outside of hacking the game itself. So I think there's a lot of areas and a lot of places that we can take the franchise. So what I'm hoping is just a way to gauge interest. They're going to say, what's our response to this? Are people pleased with this storyline? Is this something we want to expand on into a motion picture potentially, or maybe a full-fledged game, or both? Do we need to kind of take this as more of a animated comic book direction and see if it's going to turn into a more regular series? I know they kind of did that with Transformers Windblade. That was kind of a release as a mini micro series of 20-minute cartoons that was kind of more of an adult edge, just to kind of gauge the interest there. So yeah, I'm always interested and excited to see anything from an Aliens universe perspective. Hopefully this is just a precursor to get people excited, get people ready for something new in the Alien franchise, and then use this to launch bigger and better titles.
Yeah, and you know, the thing about this is, if it is true, there are so many interesting possibilities. You know, on one hand, we talked about the rumor that James Cameron might be trying to get Alien 5 back moving again, but Neil Blomkamp's busy working on the RoboCop sequel, but, you know, doesn't mean that can't be his next project. We know that Amanda Ripley's carried on in the Alien Blackout game and also the Dark Horse comic series. So there's a part of me saying, is this them basically saying, on one hand, this will quiet down the fans that have demanded a sequel to Alien Isolation and allow the Alien shooter game that we're hoping to see at E3 to go forward without people going, well, this is okay, but it's not Alien Isolation 2? Or is it part of a grander experiment where they give Alien Isolation 2 closure, which frees them up to go in other directions, but at the same time gives them the opportunity to say, you know, not to be mean, but Sigourney Weaver and the classic cast are getting older. Maybe it is time to get a 30-something, well, actually, probably in her late 20s or 30s, Amanda Ripley to carry on the franchise, so we could do a series of films based on Amanda Ripley. Because let's be honest, there is a 57-year window between Alien and Aliens when Ripley was drifting in space, where they could say, well, let's just fill in the gap here with Amanda Ripley, which gives us all sorts of flexibility for film, TV, whatever. Be very interesting. I just don't see Disney being so quick to abandon Alien, because, like people said, let's not forget at MGM Studios, they actually had the creature in as part of their attraction. So, yeah, crazier things have happened. So let's talk about Fallout. Apparently, we got 2 new roadmaps released, and now we've got talk of some new content coming. So, Michael, you obviously play it more than Justin does. So why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Yeah. So one of the things I think is good that Bethesda is doing with the 2019 roadmap is it shows they're going to continue to commit resources to the game and expand on it further. I think there's always a concern with other companies, not to name any specifically, where if something doesn't perform as they expected it or it got panned critically, which unfortunately Fallout 76 has suffered from some of that they are quick to abandon content for it, abandon additional releases for it, and kind of leave those who are enjoying the game and wanted to get more experience out of it kind of left in the lurch. And what we can say about Bethesda, and this was true I think for Elder Scrolls Online as well, is that even ESO didn't see a real successful launch in the beginning. It had some hiccups and some concerns, but it's really grown and expanded and really expanded their user base over the past several years, right? So what I think the Fallout 76 2019 roadmap does is it shows some things that people were, I don't want to say expecting, but some things they're looking for. Some of the things that I've seen reported on is they're going to do player vendors where you can actually create stuff and sell it out of your camp. They're going to have things like you can create your own spirits and alcoholic beverages that you can sell. They're going to be adding, new main quests, opening up some additional vaults to do some potential raid type scenarios. Nuclear winter, which we don't really know much about, other than they say it's going to be a new mode of play that's going to be different than what we see currently. So I think it's good. I mean, I think Bethesda's being open. They're saying, yes, we understand this game still has a long way to go. We understand that people were disappointed with its launch. We know we have work to do, and these are some of the things down the road that we're going to introduce. Now, there wasn't anything specific that I saw, and Gareth, maybe you saw something different than I did, about adding NPCs into the mix or NPC-related quests. I know there's some rumors that maybe that's what Wastelanders is going to be, and I know that Bethesda was upfront and honest when they announced it. They said, we're not going to have NPCs in this universe. The whole point is to be character-driven content, player-driven content. We're not going to be focusing on NPCs. Maybe there's a change of heart there, and maybe we are going to see a change there. But even then, I think the whole point is we're not abandoning Fallout 76. We have a roadmap in place. We're releasing huge patches that address bugs and concerns, but at the same time, we're continuing to develop quote-unquote free content, right? So the whole point of this is you've purchased the main game. These are going to be free expansions, free added additional content. That doesn't mean, just like Elder Scroll, that they're not going to have paid DLC down the road. But for now, it looks like they are going to continue to expand on what we've already purchased and kind of try to keep the player base interesting. That's kind of, I think, the key to keep Fallout 76 fresh and hopefully kind of give it a chance to kind of get its footing.
And Justin, let me ask you about this. You played it, but you said you were kind of, as I understand from a third party, your big frustration was you felt that basically all you were doing was running around to gather junk, to make junk, to sell junk. And do these changes change your interest level in the game at all?
Yeah, I think so. I have to kind of go through the roadmap a little bit more in detail, but I'm definitely open to the idea of like games as a I know this is kind of controversial of an idea, but games as a platform is becoming a lot more common. You know, Destiny launched in a particular state that had, you know, there was a lot of criticism of it, and Bungie put a lot of work in, a lot of DLC, and, you know, to the point now that when people talk about Destiny, like Destiny 1, for instance, the game at launch was significantly different than the game, you know, a year, almost 2 years later, when Destiny 2 came out. So when people talk about it, you know, there's a huge difference, a huge gulf between Destiny vanilla and then Destiny, you know, post several DLC packs and, you know, a lot of work and a lot of patches. And really that's kind of like the idea behind a lot of these games is they launch in a particular state. And a lot of times they have quite a few criticisms and yes. So, I that was kind of my criticism was it just, you know, and nothing to really dig at the game or anybody who plays it or likes it. I absolutely understand the appeal of it. It's just it wasn't really the Fallout game for me, and you know it was really kind of like my concern going in. You know it really took some of the gameplay loops of the old Fallout games and really focused on those particular gameplay loops, you know, like exploration and collecting, and maybe like a little bit of base building. But you know, the way I saw it, it sort of it focused on those gameplay loops at the sacrifice of you know, some of the lore, you know, the storytelling and, you know, the immersiveness of you know, just how, you know, lively the Bethesda settings can be. And you know, it really didn't hook me the way that the other Fallout games did. And you know, I found the gameplay to be a little bit repetitive. But that being said, you know, I'm definitely open to them working on it. And like I was saying with Destiny, you know, a year from now, Fallout 76 will be a completely different game. And I'll definitely come back and look at it because I'm a huge Fallout fan and I'm a big Bethesda fan as well. It just in its current state, it's really not the game that I'm looking for.
I think what's going to happen is that they've been very good announcing this. And, you know, we've got to remember E3 is coming up in June. You're going to get the Bethesda showcase, and we know about Doom Eternal. And although I believe, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Doom Eternal supposed to come out in April?
Yeah, I was thinking it was before E3.
Right. And so, you know, obviously, I think they're going to dedicate Fallout 76. There's going to have to be some talk, and they'll probably have some big news to drop to try to, you know, energize people. Because let's be honest, they're going to have the eyes of the gaming community on them because they usually have one of the first showcases off the bat. It's streamed all over the place. It's a very popular thing. So obviously that's going to happen. We've heard a lot of people say, well, Elder Scrolls 6 is still a ways off. And then you have their science fiction series. You know, we have the Wolfenstein thing. So basically they're in this fun thing of, okay, are we going to talk more about the titles that we've announced that are still coming? Are we going to drop all these new things, which I would expect since they have the new development series? But I think it goes without saying, there's going to have to be some kind of emphasis on Fallout 76 to basically tell the community exactly what you guys said. We've listened to you. We understand there's more to come, and this is a little taste of what there is. So go figure. Changing gears, we have some interesting stuff. Just some brief rumor right now that the Star Wars may have a third live action series coming to Disney Plus. There have been rumors about everything from one about Kira, one about Lando, one about possibly Obi-Wan Kenobi and others. We aren't hearing any details of this, but apparently a third live action series is about to be announced. And then we're also hearing that the next film after Episode 9 will not be Rian Johnson's series. It will actually be the one from the Game of Thrones producers. But of course, we expect to hear a lot more about this at Star Wars Celebration in it's coming up. It's not too far off, and we definitely have somebody on site who will be covering that. So let's bring up this topic and close things out. We've got Captain Marvel coming up in a little over a week's time. I get to see it soon. And then not too far after it, at the end of April, we get Avengers Endgame. Now, a lot of people have been wondering what is next for the Marvel movie franchise. We know there are other films. We've heard rumors of a Black Panther 2. We've heard rumors of a Doctor Strange 2. We've heard rumors of a standalone Black Widow movie, but we've heard nothing firm. Well, now we're hearing rumors that once Endgame drops, shortly after we will get the upcoming Marvel slate for the next couple of years. So we'll start with Justin. What is your take on this one?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, like I think we've talked a little bit before. Like we're in a kind of a weird time where it's difficult for them on a marketing basis to market what's coming next. I mean, obviously for timetables, it becomes challenging because you can't like announce. Well, I mean, you could, but it's not really. It wouldn't. It's unprecedented to announce a movie this big and then like have it release like a month or two later. But they're in a weird area where this movie that's coming out, Avengers Endgame, is so big. It's probably going to be the biggest film or most pivotal, most important film yet in the entire Marvel cinematic universe. So it's very important that they don't announce movies that take place after it. I mean, obviously for Spider-Man they had to, and we talked about this in the past, that this is partly a joint effort between Sony and Marvel. And the way this movie is timed, it's coming out in the summer, so even though it takes place after Avengers Endgame, they had to announce it at some point this year, because otherwise it would have been that weird case of a Spider-Man movie being announced and marketed maybe a month or two before it comes out, and I don't think Sony would have liked that very much. So I think they just had to kind of bite the bullet on that. But they're playing their cards really close to the chest on everything else, and it makes sense because, like you said, if they announce a whole bunch of these movies that take place after Avengers Endgame, it sort of spoils some of the events of that movie. And I think the way they're thinking about it, it's more important for them to hold their cards close to the chest, and then maybe right after Avengers Endgame come out, then they can start announcing these follow-up movies. It's going to be very interesting. In fact, I'm more interested and fascinated to kind of learn how the universe changes after Avengers Endgame, because I'm anticipating that, like I said, this is probably going to be the biggest movie of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is really the one they've been building up to for close to 20 years. This isn't really just the end of a phase. This is like the end of the giant story arc that they've been kind of slowly seeding for, better part of a decade. So, I'm really interested to see like how the universe looks different afterwards, and it'll. I think that they're going to have a huge opportunity to kind of like take the universe as a whole in a completely new direction, and maybe leave our characters in more unique places that we might not be expecting.
And Michael, your take, please.
Yeah, so I agree with Justin on his points. I think they get into a little bit of a situation if they announce too far in advance of what's coming out, because you do have the rumors and the spoilers, right? And you also have, there's a lot of discussion that can go around that. Obviously, they could announce standalone movies that have nothing to do with the Avengers themselves. They could have a Black Widow movie that takes place before the cinematic universe, took place, before the Avengers movies took place. But then you're going to have a lot of people speculating on, is Black Widow somebody who survives at the end of the end game? Is that going to take place before or after? So again, I agree that it's one of those things where they are going to be keeping this as close to their chest as possible. They've been building up for this for a long time. They don't want to have any spoilers go out. And whatever they do, anything they announce following Endgame is going to have either a spoiler or rumors surrounding it some way or the other. So I think the only way they really can realistically do that is to kind of announce the time frame after. And I think what we'll see is probably a couple of things, right? We're going to probably see the post-Endgame universe. How's that going to look? How does that change? What are some new characters potentially that are going to be going into that universe? And I wouldn't be too surprised to see some standalone that kind of feature on the individual characters in the Avengers, whether they survived or not. And I think, again, we're going to be kind of when you're talking about the fan base of Marvel characters, and we're talking about, we know that there are contracts coming up. We know that there are characters that aren't going to necessarily be part of that universe going forward. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to die, right? I mean, you can't imagine, Iron Man being killed off, Thor being killed off. Again, how is that going to impact the overall character arcs for those characters from a comic book perspective? So even though they may not continue in their current form, that doesn't mean we won't still see cameos in those movies going forward. So all in all, I think without giving anything away, they pretty much have no other choice but to wait and kind of hold off on some of those things.
Yeah, it's interesting because the rumors I've heard is that Doctor Strange 2, Black Panther 2, and Ant-Man 3 are all planned. We mentioned the solo Black Widow film. And of course, then you start to hear, we obviously know that there's still plans for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and there's still all sorts of, other potential things out there that are going to happen. I think it's safe to say that we're going to see another Spider-Man film, assuming this one doesn't shock everyone and tank at the box office. And then, of course, like you said, it's a very tricky thing because on one hand, a lot of people think it's going to be a clearing of the decks. Chris Evans is pretty much talked about being gone. People think Robert Downey Jr.'s done. What's happening with Chris Hemsworth? And like you said, they could die, but nobody really stays dead because let's face it, there are people that quote unquote died in the last film that may not be dead, or at least are going to see rebirths in different formats. We've already heard about the Loki series that's coming on Disney Plus, that sort of thing. And then, of course, you start to really get into the real deep stuff about, I've heard that Brie Larson has signed a 7-picture deal. Now, it's apparently going to be similar to like Chris Evans' deal where he, makes an appearance here or there. I don't know if they counted his really brief appearance in the Thor movie as a appearance per se, but let's do the math here. If I remember correctly, he's done 3 Captain America movies and 4 Avenger films, and he did cameos in Spider-Man, and he did a cameo in Thor 2, was it? So Thor: The Dark World. So that may be. I think we can see that Captain Marvel is going to be there for the foreseeable future, but it'll be really, really interesting. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for us this week, folks. We had a lot of stuff we covered this week. Hope everybody has a great week ahead, and we'll be back next week with all new stuff. And till then, take care.
All right, got it.
All right.